Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for this presentation. My name is Graham Winkelman, and it's a pleasure to be with you virtually to talk about a topic that is both a passion and a profession for me. In my role with BHP, I'm able to combine my background training and experience as a trained metallurgical engineer with a deep and enduring interest in addressing the issue of climate change in a measured, economically sound and action-oriented way. Before I start, please take note of the disclaimer and its relevance to today's presentation. So to start, a bit about BHP. Instead of talking about our market cap and our strategy and our presence around the world, I want to talk about our purpose to bring people and resources together to build a better world. This is something that we take very seriously and connects our people to issues like climate change. We know that a world that decarbonises while sharing the benefits of economic growth is a better world. Our portfolio is already well positioned to support the transition to a lower carbon world aligned with the Paris Agreement. In a 1.5 degree scenario, the world is expected to need almost twice as much steel in the next 30 years as it did in the last 30, and so the world will rely on the iron ore and coking coal that we produce. If we want to keep pace with the development of renewable technologies such as electric vehicles and solar energy, then copper production will have to double over the next 30 years. And nickel production will have to increase nearly fourfold to power the next generation of battery technology. And while the shift to cleaner energy sources is clear, the world will still need oil and gas to power mobility and everyday modern life on the pathway to decarbonisation. Finally, potash will be vital for more efficient agricultural practices and to ease pressure on scarce arable land. We're distinctly aware, though, that our challenge, the world's challenge, is to ensure that we all benefit from natural resource use in a manner that supports the transition to a low-carbon future. Today, I want to detail BHP's carbon targets and outline the actions we are taking to reduce emissions across our value chain. BHP's focus on climate change hasn't emerged overnight. We've been actively addressing climate risks for more than 2 decades. In 1997, we were among the first large companies to publish a report detailing our operational greenhouse gas emissions. We first implemented an internal carbon pricing protocol and began trading carbon credits in the European market in 2004. And in 2016, we launched the world's first forest bond with the International Finance Corporation. Most recently, we announced the next phase of our response and our desire to lead with action. This has included a commitment to reduce our operational emissions by at least 30% by FY 2030 compared to FY 2020. This is a midterm target on the way to meet our goal of being net zero in our operational emissions by 2050. We announced that we are taking action to help enable reduction in Scope 3 emissions. We will support the steel industry to identify pathways and develop technologies by 2030 to reduce emissions intensity by 30%. And we will work with the maritime industry to support an intensity reduction of 40% in BHP chartered shipping. Our hope is that these actions catalyse broader emissions reductions throughout the steel and maritime sectors. We also made a direct connection between these measures and executive remuneration. And a portfolio analysis was released that provides details around how the value of our business would fare under a variety of different scenarios. We've been setting targets to reduce emissions from our operations for decades now, and we have consistently delivered against these targets. Our long-term goal of net zero operational emissions by 2050 is clear, and today we are describing our pathway to achieve it. Setting a target of at least 30% reduction in emissions by FY 2030 from FY 2020 levels provides a clear expectation for our assets and a clear demonstration to our stakeholders that behind our target is a considered and committed plan for delivery. In developing the target, we applied the same rate of reduction to BHP's emissions that the world's emissions would need to contract by in order to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. This is known as the absolute contraction method. This is a science-based target that reflects not just our commitment to decarbonising BHP, but the recognition that we must play our part in accelerating the global pathway to decarbonisation. Our execution plan for this target includes 2 key focus areas. The first is to decarbonise electricity supplies. This is a relatively low-risk step that can be achieved in a capital-efficient manner by leveraging commercial solutions, primarily in the form of power purchase agreements or PPAs. The second is to decarbonise our truck fleet. This is a more complex task, as displacing diesel requires partnership with others to test and develop new technologies with significant lead times for implementation. We will not set a target without a clear path for delivery. This plan represents a balance between rapid implementation of renewable energy and prudent investment of diesel displacement in a manner that preserves optionality and sets us up to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We believe that the plan is aspirational but achievable, with further optimisation to continue over the coming years as new technologies emerge and commercial applications are better understood. Let's now look at a case study on PPAs. Last year, BHP entered into 4 new renewable power agreements for its Escondida and Spence copper operations in Chile. The contracts will effectively displace over 3 million tonnes of CO2 per year compared to the fossil fuel-based contracts that they are replacing. And our investment has directly triggered the development of new renewable generation capacity. These assets are now on track to have 100% renewable supply by the mid-2020s at lower cost than the supply it replaces. Learning from our experience in Chile, we have just awarded a new renewables contract here in Australia. These will reduce our Scope 2 emissions in Queensland operations by 50% by 2025. Greening our electricity supply will also assist in the second phase of our pathway to net zero, decarbonising our truck fleet. The path to increased electrification of mining equipment will include solutions such as trolley assist, overland conveyors and battery solutions. Taking a scalable approach provides flexibility for the rapid development of emerging technologies and resolves the complexities of integrating these into existing operations. But just like our PPAs, transitioning our trucks from diesel to renewables can unlock value given the higher efficiency of electric motors compared with internal combustion engines and the low-cost fuel that will underpin supply. Partnership with industry and equipment manufacturers will be key to this transition. We are already leading a collaboration between International Council on Mining and Metals members and equipment manufacturers to progress research, development and deployment of electrified mining equipment. But of course, electrification isn't the only path to decarbonising fleet. We also recently launched a cross-sectoral consortium on green hydrogen technologies and their application in mining and resources. Partnerships like this are pivotal to accelerate the decarbonisation of BHP and drive decarbonisation in our value chains. We know that we will also have a role to play to help support emissions reductions in our value chain. By definition, value chain or Scope 3 emissions occur outside of our operated assets, and we have no direct control over their production. We must therefore seek opportunities to partner with others across our value chain to enable reductions. Over the last year, we have investigated additional ways to do this in consultation with suppliers, customers, investors, and other stakeholders. Our approach is to focus on where we can make the biggest difference through both scale and influence, and includes 3 elements: annual actions, goals for 2030, and a long-term vision of steel sector and maritime decarbonisation in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. So let's take a look at how we're partnering with others to deliver this. BHP has recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the world's leading steel producer, China Baowu, with the intention to invest up to $35 million and share technical knowledge to help address the challenge of reducing greenhouse gas emissions facing the global steel industry. The 5-year partnership will focus on the development of low-carbon technologies and pathways capable of emissions intensity reduction in integrated steelmaking. Under the MOU, the deployment of carbon capture, utilisation and storage in the steel sector will also be investigated at one of China Baowu's production bases. In line with our goal to support decarbonisation of BHP chartered shipping, we have awarded the world's first LNG-fuelled bulk carrier tender. The tender will apply to the hire of 5 bulk carriers to carry iron ore between Western Australia and China and will reduce emissions by more than 30% per voyage. By developing and delivering these types of partnerships, we increase the chances collectively we can achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement to which we all aspire. With targets in place, we must close the loop by making sure delivery is incentivised and rewarded across BHP. We've been setting emissions reduction targets and linking performance against them to executive remuneration for many years. Last year, we committed to clarify and strengthen this link, and the board has now determined that performance against climate change measures will represent 10% of the outcome under the Cash and Deferred Plan, or CDP, for all executive leadership team members. The 10% component will include the key measures that we've outlined today, and actual reductions in operational emissions, actions on the pathway to net zero operational emissions, and actions to address value chain emissions. These measures will directly cascade to other senior leaders and the broader workforce. To ensure that we continue to respond to the expectations of our stakeholders, we must engage widely, actively, and consistently. We've prioritised transparency and disclosure for many years. For example, our 2015 portfolio analysis set a new standard within the resources sector. We were one of the first companies to report in line with the recommendations of the TCFD, and our industry association reviews have led the sector, and we continue to progress recent reforms. And we continue to score well in climate-related investor benchmarks, such as CDP and TPI. In September, we took the next step in transparency and disclosure by launching our climate change report. Of course, I'd encourage everyone to jump online and give it a good read. To conclude, I'd like to emphasise BHP's commitment to climate action and our goal to lead with action. This is reflected in the approach we've taken to tackling the issues on several fronts, an approach defined by three key elements. Firstly, we are a company of substance, and our actions must also be of substance. We are pursuing tangible actions to drive emissions down. Secondly, we must focus on what we can control inside our business and work with others to help them reduce emissions from the things that they control. This includes sharing our insights and expertise to amplify impact. And finally, we deliberately shape our portfolio. We are a long-term company that creates value and returns over generations. To keep doing this, we know that we must ensure we are exposed to commodities that benefit from the mega trends playing out in the world around us, whilst at the same time ensuring we're doing all in our power to reduce emissions across the value chain. I've enjoyed running you through these plans today. Thank you.